パク先生に依頼をしないと多分。
何をすればいいのDr. Pike, we're about to start. However, the translators say that they cannot unmute themselves. So I'm going to start welcoming everyone and explaining how the translation system works. But however, the translators say that can you double check to make sure that the translators can unmute themselves? Welcoming everyone and explaining how the translation system works. But however, the translators say that can you double check to make sure that the translators can unmute?
Now I made it.
Well, let me, okay, hold on just a second here. We're just about to begin. Well, let me, Youngmin, can you please mute yourself? Just a second here. We're just about. Welcome to a joint international symposium. This is the IAMSCU Research University Symposium, as well as the APAMEI monthly forum. And our theme for this year's IAMSCU Research Symposium and for this month's APAMEI forum is Transforming Education for a Changing World. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to participate in our online symposium today. This is sponsored by IAMSCU University, APAMEI, the Asia Pacific Association of Methodist Related Educational Institutions, and IAMSCU, International Association of Methodist Schools, Colleges, and Universities. And I'm going to say that in Japanese as well, just a second, because we're doing this bilingual today. 今日はIAMSCU リサーチ大学シンポジウムと APAMEI の定例のオンラインフォーラムでもあります。皆さんようこそよくいらっしゃいました。今日のテーマは、変わる世界の中で、教育の進化のことであります。皆さんようこそよくいらっしゃいました。さて始まることにあたりまして、通訳の機能に関しては説明させていただきたいと思います。
Dr. Shu, I think there is a little technical problem.
Yes.
I can hear the two sound. If the YouTube is on, you need to unmute. I think there is a little.
My YouTube is not on. I thought I hear it coming from yours.
I can hear the two sound. Am I the only one? Is there anyone who can double check? You need to unmute. I think there is. I think now it's working.
Now I can hear. I'm going to double check here. Just a second.
Now it has been taken care of. Now.
Okay. All right. Yes, we did have a problem. Okay. I will very briefly explain how to use the translation features. 通訳の機能の使い方を簡単に説明させていただきます。At the bottom of the Zoom window, you should be able to see among the icons, an icon of a globe. Zoom の窓の下の方には、アイコンの中には、地球のアイコンが見えます。で、それをクリックすると、英語と日本語と通訳なしの選択があると思います。When you click on that, you will be able to see no translation or English or Japanese. If you want to listen in English, please select English. Or if you are presenting in English, make sure that you select English. 日本語で発表する、話す皆さんは、ぜひ、そちらの方で日本語の方を選んでいただきたいと思います。So, this is a bilingual forum, and I also want to say a big thanks to our translators who are doing the hard work today of simultaneous translation. 今日これはバイリングルで行われる国際シンポジウムでありまして、今日同時通訳する方々のためにもお礼を言いたいと思います。心から感謝申し上げます。
Is speaking.
Just a second here. I'm switching screens.
Okay.
I've switched to the English channel now. So those of you who are listening in Japanese should hear the Japanese translation. And now I would like to invite the Bishop Nakpil, who is also a member of the board of directors of APAMEI, to give the opening prayer, and this will not be translated.
Let us
Bishop
pray. Our Father, we ask your presence and your blessing upon this forum. May you enable those who have been chosen to address this forum to express your will for all of our schools in their effort to become agencies of your mission in education. May you bless all the students and all the faculty who are listening. May they hear, and in hearing, do what they hear for the sake of your glory and the doing of your will on earth as it is in heaven. This is our prayer, Lord, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Bishop. And at this point, I would like to invite greetings first from the Chancellor of Aoyama Gakuin, Chancellor Yoshiharu Yamamoto. Chancellor Yamamoto, we are eager to hear greetings from you.
皆さん、青山学院がこの IAMSCU のシンポジウム、APAMEI のシンポジウムに参加できることをありがとうございます。コロナがなければ、皆さんに青山学院に来ていただいて、このシンポジウムを開くことができたかもしれませんけども、このオンラインによって多くの方々に参加していただけることを、これも感謝したいと思います。今日はメソジスト学校がこれから新しい改革に向かってどのようなことができるのかということをそれぞれの初代の先生、ミランダ先生、また4人のパネリストからそのことを伺うことができて感謝申し上げます。先生方の働きに感謝申し上げます。青山学院はすべての人と社会とに対する責任を進んで果たす人を育てる。それが青山学院の教育目標です。今、世界のことを考えると、非常に辛い思いをしている方々があることを覚えます。平和な世界がいち早く来ること、また差別のない、また貧困のない世界が来ることを願わなければなりませんけども、同時に私たち日本、あるいはアメリカ、中国、韓国、台湾、 それらの国々は少子化によってこの大学生の減少ということがまた問題にもなっています。学生たちの教育が十分行き届いていない地域と、また学生が減っているこのような現象の中にあって、それぞれがどのような取り組みをすべきか、そのことを十分に考えていかなければならない時なのだというふうに思います。私たちは聖書の中にあるペテロ第一の手紙4章の10節11節のところに、それぞれ賜物をいただいているのですから、その賜物を生かして互いに使い合いなさい。この言葉を大切にしていきたねばならないというふうに思っています。どうぞそれぞれがいただいている賜物を生かして、このメソジストの教育の伝統を広く伝えていきたいというふうに、発展していきたいというふうに願っていますので、今日一日よろしくお願いいたします。ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your greetings. At this time, I would like to invite the president of APAMEI and the president of Manila Methodist College to give greetings on behalf of APAMEI and IAMSCU. Dr. Flora Miranda.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another forum of the Asia Pacific Association of Methodist-related educational institutions in partnership with IAMSCU, and of course, sponsored by Aoyama Gakuin University. I would like to thank you for your continuous participation, and I look forward to a very engaging session with you. First, I would like to thank the Chancellor Yamamoto of Aoyama Gakuin University for having been a very supportive member of APAMEI and a leader of APAMEI as well. You are with us, sir. Bishop Nakpil, Dr. Yang Min Pei, Paul, Shu, Nir Jamasi, all members of the board who are here. Thank you so much for our continuous effort to be able to contribute something to society and today to education. Most of all, I would like to thank Dr. Jeffrey Kwan for giving us his time today and to share his valuable insights as to how we can transform education in a changing world. So without further ado, let me turn over the floor to Dr. Paul Shu for the next part of our forum this morning, this afternoon.
Thank you very much. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our main speaker today. Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Kwan is president of the Claremont School of Theology. He is one of the premier scholars today on Methodist education. Before joining the faculty at Claremont School of Theology, he was faculty at Drew University, and he has lectured to audiences around the world on Methodist education and related topics. So it is a joy to welcome him today to speak on this important topic at our symposium. Dr. Kwan, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shu. Thank you for your very kind invitation for me to participate in this very important symposium. And my greetings to Bishop Nakpil, Chancellor Yamamoto, President Flo Miranda, and Dr. Peck and colleagues. I am Asian, and I was born and raised in Malaysia. Although I have not, I have lived in the United States of America for almost 40 years now, but nobody can ever take away my Asian identity. And so it is always a pleasure and a delight to be able to work with all of you friends and colleagues from Asia. So thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts. And as I've said to Dr. Shu, I have been talking about this in the various forums, often with slight modification and variation, but I am convinced about the role that Methodist higher education can continue to play in our changing world. So thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts and to engage in conversation with all of you. Setting the context. The news was released on January 23rd, 2019, that Green Mountain College in Vermont was closing at the end of the academic year after being in existence for 185 years. Green Mountain was a niche school known for its environmental programs and consistently recognized as the greenest institution in the United States. In his announcement of the closure of the college, the then president Robert Allen said, quote, "The decision to close Green Mountain College comes only after a tireless pursuit of multiple options to remain open, including the rigorous search for new partnerships and reorganization of our finances. Despite our noteworthy accomplishments related to social and environmental sustainability, we have not been able to assure the economic sustainability of the college. Financial challenges are impacting liberal arts colleges throughout the country, the United States, and Green Mountain College is no exception. These financial challenges, the product of major changes in demographics and costs, are the driving factors behind our decision to close at the end of this academic year." End of quote. The story of Green Mountain College, a United Methodist-related college, is not unique. In March 2019, another Methodist-related college, Hiwassee College, announced that it would close at the end of the spring semester after 170 years and many struggles to stay open. Higher education in the United States has been under stress for some time now. Higher Ed Dive recently published a list of 84 private and public non-profit colleges that have closed, merged, or been acquired by larger institutions since 2016. The situation is even more dire if one includes for-profit institutions. A Chronicle of Higher Education analysis of federal data in 2019 shows that from 2014 to 2019, about 500,000 students have been displaced by college closures, which together shuttered more than 1,200 campuses. In her article in the US News and World Report, Lauren Kammerer notes, quote, "Some forecasters, including famed Harvard Business School professor Clayton Christensen, predict as many as half of all universities will close or go bankrupt in the next decade. The crisis is largely driven by declining enrollment, facilitated by the Great Recession, which resulted in a significant drop in the US birth rate. Scholars estimate that nearly 2.3 million fewer babies were born between 2008 and 2013, which, when combined with an expansion of higher education offerings in the decades preceding that, mean too many slots compared to the number of applicants. Marty Meehan, the president of the University of Massachusetts, summarizes the problem this way, quote, colleges and universities will have too much capacity and not enough demand at a time when the economic model in higher education is already straining under its own weight, end of quote. Of course, we know that the declines in the number of traditional college-age students, while perhaps the main driving force, is not the only contributing factor. There are also growing concerns about student debt, the price of higher education, and the return on investment. In addition, for-profit institutions have encountered more stringent regulation from the US federal government and self-inflicted wounds from misbehavior and poor performance. The situation is, unfortunately, not unique to the US. Since 2011, I have traveled often to Asia. One conversation I heard over and over again is the decline of college-age students, particularly in Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, and how this is impacting colleges. In fact, these countries have been tracking low birth rates for years. In an article titled, "Declining Populations Point to a Somber Future for Higher Education," Johanna Sharma writes, quote, many countries in East and Southeast Asia saw 2 decades of unprecedented expansion in higher education as participation increased, fueled by rising prosperity and aspirations. But dramatically declining birth rates in the past decade, leading to a contraction in the university-age cohort, will mean tighter constraints on universities and, in some cases, a restructuring of the sector. Japan has seen its population of graduates shrink by almost half from a peak of 2.5 million in 1992 to just under 1.2 million in 2014. The prediction is that it will fall again to roughly 990,000 in 2031. Taiwan will see a decline in its youth population of around 46% between 2015 and 2050. In the same period, Thailand will experience a population decline of 38%, while South Korea and China will see declines of 31% and 21% respectively. Many universities in Japan are failing to fill their government-allotted quotas. In South Korea, 43 colleges by 2022 and 73 four-year universities by 2024 will no longer be needed. In Taiwan, colleges and universities are cutting programs because of low enrollment. There, the Ministry of Education outlined plans in 2015 to merge or close up to 52 of the country's public and private universities, representing 1/3 of its colleges and universities. A tsunami is brewing in China. The Japan Times reported that, quote, 9.56 million people were born in China in 2022, while 10.41 million people died. It was the first time deaths had outnumbered births in China since the early 1960s, when the Great Leap Forward, Mao Zedong's failed economic experiment, led to widespread famine and death. That decline, coupled with a long-running rise in life expectancy is thrusting China into a demographic crisis that will have consequences in this century, not just for China and its economy, but for the world, experts say. End of quote. The impact, unfortunately, will have grave consequences, not only on the economy, but education as well. By 2100, China's total share of the world's student age population will be cut by half. This will have a seismic impact on global higher education. Let me turn now to our attention to the legacy of the historic relationship between Methodism and education. John Wesley was an Oxford Don, and it is widely acknowledged that he was learned, scholarly, and erudite. His scholarly production, namely his sermons, notes, journals, and other writings, reveal that he was indeed a major scholar of his time. Wesley's class meetings were also organized around education. In fact, evangelism for Wesley was rooted in education. To him, the two are inseparable. Quote, into the class, converts came as probationers. The weekly class meetings provided the regular pasturing, discipline, guidance, nurture, instruction, mentoring, and encouragement that the system afforded. End of quote. Accepting George Whitefield's invitation and encouragement to go to the Bristol area to preach in the open fields, Wesley left the comfort of the academic setting, yet his commitment to and passion for education never left him. Discovering the paucity of educational opportunities for the poor, the children of coal miners he was preaching to, Wesley founded the Kingswood School in 1748. Here, the students were nurtured in true learning and vital piety, where the roots and tradition of a Wesleyan education may be found. The heirs of Wesley have repeated this herald tradition of establishing educational institutions wherever the gospel was preached many times over. In 1784, at the Christmas conference that marked the beginning of Methodism in the United States of America, Thomas Coke and Francis Asbury emulated what Wesley had done at Kingswood by founding a college named after themselves, Cokesbury College in Abingdon, Maryland. Unfortunately, American Methodists were not prepared for such a college, leading to the demise of the college in 1796. Important lessons were learned. Russ Ritchie, Kenneth Rao, and Jean Miller Schmidt wrote, quote, 3 decades later, Methodism started over. It established academies in 1817 in Newmarket, New Hampshire, and 2 years later in New York City. The next General Conference took up the matter and did so with a new sense of education's importance to denominational well-being. End of quote. The General Conference of 1820 recommended that all the annual conferences establish as soon as possible literary institutions under their control. These earliest frontier colleges were started, quote, to give the key of knowledge to your children and those of the poor, end of quote. Literally, hundreds of institutions were founded over the decades and centuries that followed, and many of them still remain today. Among these are some of the best and most renowned colleges and universities in the world. Worldwide expansion of Methodist education. The tandem of evangelism and education has been carried by Methodists to Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Henry Gerhard Appenzeller, who had answered the call for overseas missionary service, was still a student at Drew Theological School. Arrived in Incheon, Korea on Easter Day, 1885. Appenzeller spent much of his time preparing a missionary residence as missionary activity was prohibited. When the prohibition was lifted in 1887, he began his missionary work. He founded Peche Hatang, a school for boys, in February 1887. He saw this school as a means to reach young Korean men with the gospel, to introduce beneficial Western knowledge into Korean society, to train Koreans to lead Korean Methodism, and to establish a fully rounded university. Mary F. Scranton, another Methodist pioneer in Korea, also started the first school for girls, Ihwa Hatang, in 1886. Ihwa Women's University, one of the most prestigious universities in Korea, grew out of this girls' school in 1946. This story is repeated in Malaysia, Singapore, and all the world over. Methodism in Singapore and Malaysia started out as a missionary initiative in 1885 by missionaries who were already in India. William Oldham traveled to Singapore to plant the foundation of mission. Oldham started the church's first English language boys' school, the Anglo-Chinese School, in 1886. Two girls' schools, namely Methodist Girls' School and Fairfield Methodist Girls' School, were subsequently established in 1887 and 1888, respectively. A decade or so later, the Methodists also started schools for boys and girls in many places in Malaysia. The educational efforts of Methodists in Singapore and Malaysia have been rather remarkable and significant. Today, the Anglo-Chinese schools in Singapore are regarded as premier schools, and the Methodist College in Kuala Lumpur is a highly regarded and sought-after pre-university institution. These schools have become symbols of educational excellence. The story of Methodist education continues. In 1992, in response to the critical need of higher education in the continent of Africa, the United Methodist Church founded Africa University in Old Mutare, Zimbabwe. The mission of African University is to provide quality education within a Pan-African context through which persons can acquire general and professional knowledge and skills, grow in spiritual maturity, develop sound moral values, ethics, and leadership qualities. Today, Africa University has more than 1,700 students from 27 countries, and graduates are serving in 38 countries throughout the continent of Africa. The legacy and distinctive qualities of a Wesleyan education. The decline in higher education has had an impact on the future of global Methodist education. In such a challenging sector and shrinking market for students, what distinctive roles should Methodist education play in global society? What can we draw on from the legacy of our Methodist education? First, Methodist education has never been just about imparting of intellectual knowledge. It has never been merely about preparing men and women to be successful people in the workforce. It has never been just about training the best pastors, teachers, doctors, engineers, lawyers, business executives, CEOs, etc. That, of course, is important for any educational endeavor and cannot be minimized. The Wesleyan tradition of education, however, is about marrying vital piety and true learning. It is as much about character formation as it is about intellectual formation. It is about the formation of the total person. During the opening convocation of the joint IAMSCU-NASCM meeting at Washington's National Cathedral in July 2011, James Laney reminded us that church-related colleges are not just in the educational business. They are the ones that are custodians of the soul. Over the years, I have come to question whether or not it is enough to focus on the formation, both intellectual and character, of the individual in higher education, including Methodist education. What if Methodist higher education takes on the challenge of rethinking education, not only in terms of individual formation, but also of communal formation? This will necessitate a rethinking of curriculum, frames of references, perspectives, and pedagogies. I have no idea yet what that would look like, but I have a hunch that it will, at the minimum, move us and our students away from competition to collaboration and help repair the increasing fragmentation of our societies. Such an education will create a balance between individual freedom and equality and communal principles and values of respect and compassion for the elders, the poor, and the underprivileged. It has the potential to help our colleges and universities to produce more compassionate and caring citizens for the world. John Wesley's turn toward education and the founding of Kingswood School was a response to the reality of his polarized context, particularly the polarization of social classes. As Professor James Taimo of Mozambique notes, quote, John Wesley sought to respond to the problems of his time, as he clearly felt the strong weight of capital that greatly disrupted English society through the marked degradation of cities, human life, poor housing and food conditions, an increase in diseases and criminality. That is, industrial capital generated social chaos in English societies, end of quote. Wesley's response to the social polarization in turning to education was a compassionate response toward restorative action. Methodist higher education may perhaps want to take more seriously the concept of compassion in light of the increasingly polarized world we live in. All we need to do is to think of the war in Ukraine, gun violence, racism, sexism, discrimination against LGBTQIA people, and the perpetuation of hate because of tribal, religious, and political differences. The list goes on and on. Compassion is an important value across religious traditions. In many ways, it is the core of our Judeo-Christian tradition. The Hebrew Bible and New Testament speak about compassion, mercy, as a part of the character of God. For example, Paul appeals to the mercies of God, God's compassion for humanity and the creation, to urge the Roman believers to live into an ethic of compassion, Romans chapter 12. My good friend and colleague Andrew Dreitzer notes, quote, the roots of the words most consistently translated into English as compassion convey an instinctive, emotion-filled, a physical churning of the gut or a maternal movement of the womb, end of quote. It is about the feeling of sharing the experience of another person. Compassion literally means feeling with. Within the biblical tradition, when words of compassion show up, almost always actions to ease suffering follow. Another dear friend and colleague, Frank Rogers, adds, quote, compassion is simply being moved in one's depths by another's experience and responding in a way that intends either to ease their suffering or promote their flourishing. Metaphorically, compassion is a movement of the heart, the quiver we feel, for example, when we see someone in pain, end of quote. Both Rogers and Dreitzer note emphatically that compassion must include restorative action. As Rogers notes, without it, compassion degenerates into sentimentality, feeling bad for someone's pain, but ultimately abandoning them to fend for themselves. Compassion walks towards, not away. Education in general and the founding of Kingswood School in particular was training for salvation, for restoration, and for transformation of the lives of all people. Hence, Wesley's passion for education is also about an ethical and compassionate response to his context and addressing the injustices during his time. Imagine if Methodist higher education, as part of its mission toward the intellectual and character formation, produces more compassionate and caring citizens and turns them loose. These graduates can have the potential to heal and transform our polarized and broken world. If Methodist education is about the formation of the entire person and communities, it follows that the second distinctive feature of a Methodist education is service. Laney has noted that, quote, John Wesley was a product of the establishment of privilege to privilege, and he could have remained within the system, being very dedicated and pious, end of quote. Yet, because Wesley never remained stuck in the establishment of privilege, he was able to forge the tradition of education for service. By bringing in the poor, educating them, empowering them, and then turning them upon the world so they could become productive citizens, people who had a sense of purpose, a direction, a focus, people who make contributions, Wesley unleashed his students, his heirs, for a life of service. Thus, a Methodist education is about instilling in women and men a sense of service to the world. It is not just about getting a job offer after college and making as much money as one can. It is not about climbing the social ladder. It is about leaving college and leaving college with a sense of purpose to create change, to transform the lives of others. Methodist education has always been more than providing knowledge. It encourages students to see themselves as stewards of their community, who should use their education to give back to the community and the world. I said previously that Methodist education should focus on community formation as much as individual formation, precisely because of this distinctive feature of service. Service is at the heart of the teaching of Jesus, and Wesley knew it well. In the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, Jesus is remembered to have said that, quote, he came to serve, not to be served. Matthew chapter 20, verse 28, and Mark chapter 10, verse 45. Jesus embodies this sense of service by washing the feet of his disciples in John's Gospel. John chapter 13, verses 1 to 17. Service is about the transformation of lives and communities. I have a good friend who has embodied a life of service more than anyone else I have personally known. Dr. Nitin Shah is a medical doctor and anesthesiologist. He has organized and led 573 national and international medical and surgical missions over the last 30 years. During these missionary ventures, he has introduced countless students, residents, faculty, and volunteers to the benefits of helping those in need. Dr. Shah is a Jain. Just imagine what Methodist higher education can look like and the impact it can have if our graduates are unleashed for a life of service. The third distinctive feature of a Methodist education is accessibility. Accessibility dates back to Wesley's founding of the Kingswood School, when he made education available and accessible to the poor and the disadvantaged. Accessibility means reaching out and providing education to as many as possible. It is about the education of those societies so that people who couldn't read were now able to read scriptures, newspapers, and legal papers and become conversant with the world. It is this accessibility that led to the founding in 1836 of Wesleyan College to empower women, the first college to grant degrees to women in the United States. It also led to the founding of the Freeman's Aid Society to address the vocational, educational, and religious needs of newly freed slaves. As Laney further notes, quote, Wesley's educational vision opened the door to these people. It changed their hearts, gave them a motive for improvement, educated them, and turned them upon the world, end of quote. It was this same vision of accessibility that led Methodists to start schools all over the world, to make education accessible to those for whom such opportunities were once absent. It was this same vision that moved Methodists in the United States to found many of the historically Black colleges and universities. It was this same vision that propelled Methodists to establish schools for girls in Japan, Korea, India, Malaysia, Singapore, and so on. Methodist education empowered the poor, the underprivileged, the disadvantaged, and women to become agents of transformation. Accessibility is not just about providing opportunities for others, not just about letting others have a seat at the table. It is about change, about transformation. Sharon Hales notes, quote, when we go out as Wesley did and include others, something changes not only in them, but in us. And the empowerment is not only with them, but with us in the new ways that we can live in a more open and sympathetic and understanding life, end of quote. The United Methodist Church continues to see this accessibility in education as a social justice issue when it articulates its social principles. Quote, we believe that every person has the right to education. Persons should not be precluded by financial barriers from access to church-related and other independent institutions of higher education, end of quote. For the last 275 years since the founding of the Kingswood School, the educational arm of the Methodist tradition has been at the forefront of leading the church forward by subverting social constructions, by making education accessible to women, the marginalized, and the poor. Global Methodist institutions have stood up for them even when the church was not ready to include them in the total life of its ministry. Forging the future of Methodist higher education. Combining true learning and vital piety for transformation. Coupled with a commitment to service and accessibility is our core mission as Methodist institutions. It is what sets us apart, and it is how we will remain relevant in this changing academic climate. We must zero in on the qualities that distinguish our institutions and use them to adapt to the needs of the next generation of students. As we face a shrinking college-age population, we will learn to alter our approach and better meet the needs of this shifting demographic. In a world of rising education costs, we must collaborate to find savings and identify innovative strategies to remain affordable for students of all socio-economic classes. We need to remember that while countries like Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and China are facing declining birth rates, such is not the case in many other countries in Asia. Methodist higher education can refocus and reclaim its core mission toward transformation, service, and accessibility. Poverty is still a critical issue in many parts of Asia. Poverty has made it difficult, if not impossible, for the poor and underprivileged to have access to higher education. Can Methodist-related institutions of higher learning, particularly those facing enrollment decline, find a way to provide access to the poor and underprivileged in other countries? In 2011, at the IAMSCU NASCUM conference, it was heartening for me to hear from Dr. Luis Cardoso that the Methodist University in Brazil took in a number of students from Haiti and provided them with a tuition-free education. Online education is now an option that can be maximized. It is a mission that can garner support from philanthropists. Let me give you an example from my own context in graduate theological education. With a colleague in Asia, I launched a PhD program in collaboration with a church-related university in Asia. The idea has been to provide accessibility to doctoral education accessibility to doctoral education to Asian students. Even by providing a 50% tuition scholarship, the cost is still prohibitive for many students. To ease the financial strain for these students, I approached two donors who are now providing additional financial support to many of the students. I believe that the same can happen for Methodist-related universities and colleges. We can open the door to students who can afford and those who cannot. We can change their hearts and transform them. Give them a motive for improvement, educate them, and turn them upon the world for a life of service to heal, repair, and transform a polarized and broken world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful, wonderful lecture. Really inspiring. And I think that it gives all of us a great deal to think about. So at this point, I would like to call on our responders to respond and reflect upon this. Now, I'll take a moment and introduce our 4 responders today. Each one of them will have about 5 to 7 minutes to give a response on their thoughts to this really encouraging, insightful, and challenging lecture by Dr. Kwan. So our first response will be from Dr. Bramer Mella, who is president of Southern Philippine Methodist Colleges. Our second responder will be from Korea, Dr. Jai-Chien Cho, professor of New Testament at Jeonju University. Our third responder is Dr. Nija Masi, professor of Isabella Thoburn College and APAMEI board member. And our fourth responder will be from Japan, Professor Masayuki Ida, who is professor emeritus of Aoyama Gakuin University and a former board member of IAMSCU. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Mella to please give us a response.
Good noon, everyone. As I read the manuscript and as I listen to the talk, I have mixed emotions. At least 3. I feel a peace knowing that our situation here in Mindanao is not unique, that it is not our fault, or we are not to be blamed if we are experiencing financial hardship because of the decrease on enrollment. I also feel hopeful that we are doing our best, not just to survive, but to refocus and create programs to journey with the people that would impact the lives of the people in the community. I also feel happy that SPMCI is still open and it's still operating and it is not closed. I am Framer Melia, the president of Southern Philippines Methodist Colleges Incorporated, the only United Methodist Church-related higher educational institution in Davao Episcopal area, which comprised the whole of Mindanao, Visayas, Bicol region. SPMCI is now on its 28th year of service to the church and the community. In 2022, there are more than 1,000 schools, basic education and higher educational institutions in the Philippines that had closed. They have suspended their operation and eventually closed their schools. So SPMCI, I would say that I totally agree with the lecture of Dr. Kwan that if we are experiencing hardship, we could recreate, we could refocus, and still have an impact in our community because we are not just doing education, but we do education with full commitment. So here at SPMCI, I think I would like to share with you our situation here at Southern Philippines Methodist Colleges Incorporated. We call SPMCI as the college by the woods at the foot of Mount Apo, the Wellness Garden Campus. So Mount Apo is the highest peak here in the Philippines. And for us, or for everyone to recognize and remember SPMCI, because this is just a school, a small college, we have to, we have to have a reference, and this is the foot of Mount Apo. But aside from calling SPMCI as the college by the woods at the foot of Mount Apo and the Wellness Garden Campus, we call SPMCI as the college with a plus, a college with a brand, the Wesleyan brand. So we have already felt some challenges even when I started, that was about 9 years ago. We know that it's very hard to survive in this part of Mindanao, knowing that there are already so many state colleges and universities being given full support by our government. But we recognize that the SPMCI is not just a school, but it is a school with a plus, which means we are not just giving generic education, but education with a brand. And this plus is what we call, now I know the names, that being transformative, doing education with service, and being accessible to all. So I would like to share some experiences of SPMCI having these three focuses. The first one is transformation. The demographics of the learners of SPMCI is 60% Christians, 20% are Islams, or they belong to the Muslim group, and 20% are not Christianized or Islamized religion, because there are so many indigenous people in this part of the country. And we can relate so many stories of our alumni on how their lives were transformed because of our college here in Mindanao. Mokramin is a son of a revolutionary Muslim leader. He is the first to have college degree from their clan and from their community. And he said, during his graduation, I am grateful that I am, during his graduation, actually the almost whole leaders in the community were there. The jeepney was full, and there were about 30 of them celebrating for his graduation. And just recently, he passed the licensure examination for teachers. And he said, I am grateful that I am now a licensed professional teacher. So instead of carrying a gun or firearms, I now carry a chalk and lesson plans. I know this, that there is hope for young leaders or young children in our community, because they will be transformed, because they will be educated. When it comes to service, there is one intentional program that we are doing here, and this is to support the duyan or damayan at ugnayan ng mga ina at asawa na mag-aaral sa SPMCI. Support and assistance to mothers and wives, students of SPMCI. So you would see, if you are here in our college, you would see that there are cribs in the classrooms, that there are hammocks attached to the branches of the trees, and that their classmates would take turns to take care of the small children of their classmates, so that their classmates would be able to attend to their classes. So our college here is a playground of children, of students who are mothers, bringing their small children so they can go to classes. We believe that by helping these young mothers for 4 years, their lives will be changed. So instead of just taking care of their children all throughout, but if they have degrees, then their lives will be changed. Now, in terms of accessibility, almost 100% of our students are scholarship grantees. Scholarship from the government or churches or friends. Most of them are from the rural areas. Most of them are from poor families, and some of them have special needs. This means that even if they have scholarship, they still need more. Because they have, we call them diverse learners. They have special needs. So we become more extra patient to them, more understanding, and this becomes very intentional for us, because we would like them to finish their studies. So we are very happy to share that SPMCI had been consistent to be the highest percentage board passer in the whole province, and that we have already some top-notchers. Almost all of the pastors and deaconesses who graduated from 2020 are our alumni. And most of our district superintendents here are our alumni. And our newly elected bishop is an alumnus of our school. So even if the college is just small, but the impact is already great in terms of some transformation and changes with regards to the quality of life of the people in the community and in our church. But just like the experiences and plight of other United Methodist Church-related institutions, SPMCI is facing great challenge when it comes to survival. So the question is, should we suspend our operation and eventually close the college? But you know, every time that I will attend the annual conference and during the time when there is already the reading of appointment and the name of the local church will be called, and supposedly the name of the pastor or deaconesses that will be assigned there will be called, but instead of giving the name, the district superintendent would just say to be supplied or to be arranged. I feel sad. I know that it means there are new graduates of AP theology. These are the students who would be pastors, or there are no graduates of a Bachelor of Early Childhood Education. These are our supposedly deaconesses. It means further that only few are studying at SPMCI, that few will be church workers, and that weaker and less ministries of the church for the congregation and the community. So for this year, we have no first-year students. For this year, we only have the last batch for our AB Theology program and the Bachelor of Early Childhood Education program. So the question is, what's next? Are we going to suspend the operation of the college? Are we going to close the college? No. We still have our facilities. We still have our human resources. We still have our brand, a college with a plus. So what did we do? We studied our capacity, our resources, and the need of the church and the community. So we have developed and offered some certificate courses. Just now, just today, we have finished our 6.5 days face-to-face classes for 32 mental health advocates from all over the Davao Episcopal area. So we offered certificate on mental health. And the next batch will be the frontliners from our LGUs or local government unit working in the hospitals. We still continue to conduct psychosocial and spiritual intervention during crisis situations. We are being tapped by our local government units in the city and in the province. We are still giving trainings and seminars on peace education and cultures of Mindanao, as well as gender and development. So just like other United Methodist Church-related higher educational institutions, we also encounter and face challenges every day. But just like the challenge to us in this beautiful lecture, we can reinvent, we can re-engineer, we can refocus. We will not just lose our identity. We can still have impact in our community. So we are not just a mere college. We will always be a college with a plus, a college with a brand, a college for transformation, service, and accessibility. Thank you very much for the lecture, Dr. Kwan. It gives us hope and that we know that we are not alone in this part, the southern part of the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mella. for your encouraging message, especially in the difficult situation that you are. Thank you so much. At this time, I would like to ask Dr. Cho from Korea to please give us the response.
Hello, I'm Jae-chun Cho. I'd like to give some words about the context that I'm coming from. I'm currently serving a university, which is a Christian institution, Jeonju University, although it is non-denominational. And I myself have been involved in many denominational traditions, except Methodist, actually. My father is a Pentecostal pastor for 30 years, and my wife is a Presbyterian pastor as well. But I'm currently attending a Lutheran church in Seoul. So anyways, I'm serving a university, Christian university, and in my university, we have a theology department, which used to have 80 students, but currently we have only 20 students. We have been downsized by the university because we have difficulty recruiting students in our departments. And I'm teaching Bible, obviously New Testament in that department, but also I'm giving a lecture on Christianity and religion in general to the students in other departments as well. So I've been thinking a lot about the future of theological education on the one hand, and Christian education in general, Christian higher education in general on the other hand. So here's my response. Well, let me share my manuscript. I think it's better to share this with you. I appreciate Dr. Kwan's paper, which contains both a keen observation of the crises we are facing, as well as a visionary proposal for the future of Methodist higher education. Based on what we hear from Dr. Kwan, let me make a couple of comments which include questions and reflections. Let me begin with the demographic riddle. As Dr. Kwan rightly describes, the precipitous decline in enrollment in universities and colleges poses serious challenges for the survival, let alone growth and development of Christian higher education in South Korea. Surely, dwindling population is the major factor, and the rapidly dropping birth rate is a disconcerting phenomenon. The most difficult part of the problem is that it is almost impossible to turn the tides back. Once the trend of low birth rate sets in, the downhill continues, or at least it stagnates at a very low level and never goes back up to where it once was 10 or 20 years ago. So Korea has been known known as a country that has the lowest birth rate in the world as of today. So the effect is long-lasting, making it that much difficult for schools to recover or sustain from damages, financial or otherwise. Sadly, educational institutions are particularly vulnerable to this kind of social changes in macro structure because of the very nature of education. Education is and has always been an operation based on human interaction. And people who are involved in education, especially teachers and administrators, tend to keep a rather rigid outlook on human nature. Unlike private companies, universities and colleges are neither willing nor able to adapt themselves to rapidly changing social structure. But change is not an option anymore. Unless we force ourselves to be flexible enough to meet the changing needs of the society, we are doomed to shut down our mission. Now, in the light of Dr. Kwan's presentation, I'd like to raise a question. Do the three distinctive qualities of Methodist higher education that Dr. Kwan beautifully explained still matter in the midst of impending changes of ourselves as institutions. Those three goals, formation, both individual and communal, service, and accessibility, are precious legacy throughout the history of the educational mission of the Methodist Church. They are time-tested and lasting. But are they still valid in the critical situation we are currently in? I think they are. But in order for them to remain our core value, we need to ask this question. What are some concrete and practical ways to apply those qualities in our new curricula, organizational structure, and financial plan? The key factor to consider here is the expansion, or rather exploration, of a new pool or new market, if you will, for our educational mission. Because of the shrinking population of traditional college students who are in their late teens and early 20s, we should turn our sights to the adult or even senior population. If we do so, how do we keep and put into practice the three values of Methodist higher education: formation, service, and accessibility? How do we apply those values in the new context in which we welcome and recruit from very different age group than the one that we used to have recruited, like late 30s, 40s, 50s, in all age groups, we have to recruit them. So that's my first question. How do we apply those three goals in the diverse age groups? If I'm allowed a little more time, I want to touch on another issue, which is not discussed extensively in Dr. Kwan's presentation. It is about the new cultural and philosophical outlook of the younger generation. It has long been pointed out by many that we are on the verge of entering into a new age. The fourth industrial revolution, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, digital revolution, and so on. Another huge task for our generation is to cope with the global warming and its aftermath. Possibly the global pandemic is one of them, but it gave us a whole new set of puzzles. Everyone went online, including ourselves. And we are forced to get used to a new mode of human interaction. Some people say that the higher education should adopt more technology and online communication because that's what the current young generation is comfortable with. Others say that we need to provide the human interaction, face-to-face meeting, and physical presence and cooperation for young people because they lack those elements in their lives, and they would appreciate the traditional learning experience in the classroom, face-to-face education in universities and colleges. Which way should we take? Given that the young people remain our primary customers, we need to figure out how we can realize the three values mentioned above in these changing cultural and philosophical milieu. Those are the two questions that I have. Thank you for listening to my response.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Cho. Can you please stop sharing your screen, Dr. Cho?
Sure.
Thank you very, very much. That's a very interesting, very insightful responses to the lecture. And our next response is from India. Dr. Nirja Masi, professor of Isabella Thoburn College and APAMEI board member, has agreed to respond. We originally had another responder who unfortunately could not attend suddenly. So Dr. Masi, on extremely short notice, agreed to be our responder from India, and I appreciate that. Dr. Masi, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. And it is really a privilege to be able to speak from India, the Indian perspective, after listening to such a wonderful talk by Dr. Jeffrey Kwan. And his talk has actually given me a lot of hope, as it was also told by the other respondents, that we are still relevant. Yes, your talk has certainly helped me to go back and revisit our mission, vision, and purpose. It gives us hope. So I want to just tell you two things about my real life that will tell you what the role of Methodist higher education has played in my life and life of many of us. So I am a second generation to have been recipient of the Methodist higher education. First being my father, who is 81-year-old now. He was born in a village in Balia, a very small village. And he got the opportunity to study in Methodist school, and then he went to a Methodist college. And we can very well imagine that it was only the circumstances created by the Methodist institutions that he was able to go and study in these institutions. His education not only made him a professional, and he got into central government postal department, but it also broadened his horizon. And after his marriage, unlike his brothers, he did not leave his family back in the village and proceeded only alone to his workplace, but he took my mother along. And there I was born in Kolkata. Again, when I was born in, my mother asked my father, have you told the folks back home that a baby girl has been born? So my father said that, do you think they are going to distribute sweets on being uh, a baby girl born in our family? Then comes my story. I also got my school education, and then I came as a young girl of 17 in Isabella Thoburn College. And this college has produced many leaders in all walks of life. Professional knowledge, skills, growth in spirituality, maturity, development of sense of moral values, ethics, leadership qualities, character building. And we also have the college ideals: health, honesty, courtesy, scholarliness, poise, dependability, loyalty, broad-mindedness, service, and spirituality. And the motto of my college, we receive to give. So I got my education here. And then after getting my degree, I appeared in the service selection board for Army, and I got selected. Because in India, Army selection is not compulsory, but it is through merit, and it is a very, very stringent procedure. And I made it to that. And when I got commissioned, and the postal man, he went to my village for the verification, and the same people, they actually distributed sweets that I am the first girl to have got commission in Army, and it was a very big moment for my family. So this all happened because of the Methodist higher education that we have got. And I still feel that the role of Methodist education is very relevant today also in India. There are many institutions, and Isabella Thoburn College was started in 1886. It was the first in the series when Dr. Jeffrey Kwan mentioned about the college, Eva University. It was first, our college was the first in this series. And one more thing, that I visited my same village of 5 years ago, and I can see that we still need such Methodist institutions from at every level. Now, coming to the future of Methodist education, as the point was brought out by Dr. Kwan about the declining birth rates of the college going, declining young people's going to college. But here in India, the annual birth rate it accounts for 1/5 of the world yearly childbirths. And the India higher education system is the world's third largest in terms of the number of students. And more number of students are still going abroad to get higher education. So I was just thinking that, of course, Dr. Kwan has already explained in so many words that this is an era of collaborations and not competition. And I also feel that when I visited Incheon campus in 2015, and I was really, really impressed by the magnificent buildings and the infrastructure, and everything is so nice. And I was just wondering that if we could share these resources, like we have human resources, and this collaboration will take this Methodist higher education and its impacts in a longer way. And some more things that I want to share here is that, yes, in the days to come, I feel that the stress should be more on the development of not only the profession, but also because this is an era when even the hiring authorities are not hiring only based on the IQ, but EQ is becoming very much importance. And in our college, we give a lot of importance to the spiritual value education and making the students a better human being. So that way I see that we are still relevant and we are doing our job. And thank you, Dr. Kwan, for this very wonderful lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Masi. Very much appreciate your responding from your particular context in India that gives a great perspective that's different from other parts of Asia. So it's very helpful to have your contribution and response. Thank you. And our final responder today is Professor Masayuki Ida. He is Professor Emeritus of Aoyama Gakuin University and also a former board member of IAMSCU. We were expecting another responder from Japan, but unfortunately was not able to for a funeral. And I called Dr. Ida yesterday, and he graciously accepted. And I couldn't think of a better person to respond today. He has great expertise and experience, and working as a board member of IAMSCU for many years, I thought that he was a perfect person. So Dr. Ida, please go ahead with your response.
Thank you for introducing me. And then I have, I think, almost 5 minutes. So my presentation should be short. I'm showing my slides on screen. Is it you can read and see? Okay.
We can see it, yes.
Okay. And then in Aoyama Gakuin University, I'm in the side of graduate school education and undergraduate education for IT and management and business. After I got retired, and I joined one of the Methodist related schools in Yamanashi. And then I have been related with how to promote such schools in Yamanashi Prefecture for 2 years. And then also that I have been working as the member of Executive Council of Kyodan for a long time, perhaps 8 years. And I had made a survey of and created a plan for stimulating the young generations for Kyodan. And as an IAMSCU board member over the 15 years ago or so, most of the works of me is the bridging Asia and South America in the Brazilian group and Argentina group, in combining the works of them and introducing the Asian side, especially Japanese side and South Korean side to the mainland America and South America. and now working as much more freelance style. And then the top picture is the Vietnam, my intensive class of last May. I had taught them even in the COVID period. And the bottom is my graduate school classes, so 3 years ago. Then I like to introduce the Japanese situation a little bit using the 4 slides. First one is the last month, Japanese government decided to have or start Digital Garden Cities initiative. At the bottom left side, it showed the first slide of the governmental decision slide. It was decided on December 23 of last year, just 1 month ago. And we all understand there are 3 reasons behind. One is the crisis on innovation capability or power of this nation. So many things, including economy itself, is not in a good shape now in Japan. So we need to stimulate this aspect of Japan. Second one is, as we all know, a decreasing birth rate and aging populations. How we cope with this? Educational institution may focus on senior aged people, or maybe much more focus on younger generations, getting more enrollment, not to the public schools, but to private schools and Christian schools, maybe. Third one is a Tokyo centralization or over concentration to Tokyo. So it means I am one of the people who trying to have a strategy or policy to people stay in their hometown and get the education and get a job there. And so it totally means stimulation of provincial cities. And also it means decreasing students for provincial schools is an issue. So that is a total things around me to something to do. At the same time, Tokyo is not decreasing at the size or in the various aspects. It means there is increasing divergence between Tokyo and the provincial cities and the towns. For Tokyo, people are coming from outside of Tokyo. In other words, a population influx to Tokyo, we observe. So the universities and educational institutions in Tokyo are not so much influenced by the decreasing birth rate, I can say. But the provincial side is greatly suffered from the shortage of students and need to close or need to change the strategy or size of the institutions. Fortunately, as green rectangle 1, Tokyo part is mostly same, keeps same, keeping this pace for the next 20 years or so. Not much problem will be in Tokyo. But for rural side or countryside or provincial side, the clearly decreasing number of the populations affects everything, economy, education, and many things. So I myself is decided to go out from Tokyo and teaching younger people and establish the way to educate younger people there. So I'm now interested in the how to restructure or restructure junior high, senior high levels. This is my concern. So what we can do? I mean, Methodist-related schools in Japan. In 2009, I had reported to the board there are 19 educational institutions related with Methodist background. And some are merged and getting a survival. Just like Seiwa College is merged into Kwan Gakuin. And some other small such type of things happened during the last 10 years. Attempts to keep service to younger people. The other way we have to be struggling and finding a way to do that. That is creating distance learning course. The course named Grace course we had established for junior high and senior high of Yamanashi Eiwa schools. So it can cope with the accessibility issues, I think, or we hope. And formation of the entire person is the keyword, as far as I can say, for Methodist educations. And the governmental initiative for high school educations becoming to emerge. That is a Ikiru Chikara ministry guidelines for educations. Ikiru Chikara literally means power to live, giving the such capability to young people. That is the guidelines for public schools, primary school, junior high, senior high level. And most of the schools in Japan are trying to cope with this slogan and then finding a way to enhancing or empowering or maybe restructuring the educational systems of each schools. Of course, it has related with truant students issues we observed, and online education during the COVID season also affected the policy we can take in future. And mainly, most of the educational institutions are focusing on Sogo Gakushu or Tankyu Gakushu, which means exploring capability enhancement. Focusing on active learning, project-based learning, or service learning even. The catchphrases some of the schools, including even in non-Christian schools, are using. Service learning is one of the catchphrases many public schools or private schools has chosen. And then this is as Dr. Kwan said, the 100% coping with our way of understanding of education, formation of the entire person. So I am feeling and carrying out my work for Japanese schools. Top priority is the formation of the entire person and keeping the service as possible to students or young generations and enabling the various accessibilities to such students. That's what we can do and we are doing. So please pray for us. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Dr. Ida, thank you very much for your response. It is now time for the open discussion. And at this time, I would like to open it up for questions from anyone. Oops, it says announcements. That's the wrong one. There you go. Open discussion. So we are open for discussion questions, I invite you to write a question into the chat. Any of the presenters, responders, and some others can unmute themselves and speak. If you cannot unmute them yourself, please raise your hand or write in the chat. And we can have a short time of open discussion. Dr. Kwan, after hearing the 4 responders, could you please start us out with giving some of your comments and reflections upon what the 4 responders talked about?
Thank you, Dr. Shu. Let me first express my deep appreciation to our 4 responders, Dr. Mayer, Dr. Cho, Dr. Masi, and Dr. Ida, for taking time to read and engage my thoughts. It is very, in many ways, a delightful experience to hear that all of you, in your own context of doing higher education, resonates with what I was trying to say about the values of Methodist higher education, and to hear from each of you how this, in many ways, has continued to be a reality in the kind of education that you are providing in your various contexts. Dr. Mayer, I was especially touched when you talk about that Muslim graduate of your institution having been transformed by his education in your college. That is a very powerful story that Methodist higher education need to continue to tell these kinds of stories. And you touch on so many of the themes and how this continue to be lived out in a very difficult, challenging context, but one that can continue to produce hope as well. Dr. Cho, I really like the way that you pose the philosophical and cultural shifts that is making, and and you are right that we need to take seriously those kinds of philosophical and cultural shifts. Education is being transformed in terms of its structure and its delivery. The question is how can we continue to align values with the necessary changes that needs to be attended to, and thus paying attention to a different reconfiguration of human community, of networking, thus attention to artificial intelligence. How should we, in attending to those, continue to focus on education for transformation? If attention to AI helps us to produce graduates that are going to silo themselves and just deal with intellectual matters, is that the kind of education that we want to perpetuate? So all those are very important issues that we must bring into conversation, and dealing with adult population, senior population, reinventing education for a group of people or groups of people who may in the past have thought that college education has passed them by. How can we reclaim that? And this is where I think, from my own context in Asia, having grown up in Asia, very often we have we come with the perspective that if you do not go to college at the age of 18, 19, you would have missed the boat. But what I've learned in the context of the United States is that education can continue to be made available, but it takes the transformation of the minds of people to make that happen. And I think what you are articulating is so significant. Dr. Massey, I appreciate the stories that you tell about your father and yourself, of the significance of the kind of education, Methodist related education, has transformed your father's life, your life. You do not use the word women's rights, feminism, but from my context, those are exactly the kind of values that you have lifted. That sexism is dealt with very differently. But accessibility for you and your family becomes significant, powerful personal stories. And I deeply appreciate that. And finally, Dr. Ida, your profound words about trying to grapple with the context of Japan in relation to Tokyo and the provinces. These are huge issues. And how do we navigate that to make sure that the privileging of urban centers do not lead to the destruction of provincial, rural areas, and education in the areas becoming more and more diminished and depleted. So we have a lot of work to do. And my hope is that out of these kinds of conversation, institutions in Asia will find a way to collaborate. I am all for collaboration. I want to find a way to continue to collaborate in my context and in contexts that I go to. But on your own, in the Asian context, the role that APAMEI is doing for Methodist education, finding a way to collaborate to make education more accessible to people all over in the context of Asia, is going to be a powerful testament to Methodist education in Asia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your response. I'd like to open it up to the floor. If you have some questions or comments, I'd love to hear from any of you now. If not, I have a question I was thinking about that I'll ask Dr. Kwan to answer, to think about. Certainly, the three aspects of Methodist education that you raised, the 3 points, formation, service, and accessibility, are all extremely important. I was thinking that in the context of competitive institutions, we are able to effectively do formation and service quite well. We're able to focus on those. However, it becomes difficult to how can I say that the third point of accessibility becomes a challenge, because by our very nature, we are a competitive institution. How can a Methodist institution be a high-level competitive university and promote accessibility? Scholarships, or do you have other thoughts on this? There's always the challenge of wanting to make it more accessible, but if the university is a very competitive environment with a small percentage of students who are able to enter, how can we promote accessibility in that context? I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shu. That is a very significant question for a lot of institutions in the midst of the more and more challenging context. The question is, do institutions that aspire to be excellent need to be completely elitist, that it turns away those that cannot afford education? I think this is a question of mission, whether or not institutions that have that continue to strive to be the very best and competitive, are there possibilities that it turn and ensure that a certain segment of its population will be designated for people who are excellent but cannot afford? I think excellence and affordability are not always mutually exclusive issues. There are very excellent students that come from very poor background that will not be able to afford the kind of education without any assistance. But what you, having grown up in the context of the United States, you know how a lot of institutions in the United States have now begun to rethink what is excellence, and to rethink how to make education accessible to those that through different measures will be excellent students, but will need the kind of support to excel in those contexts. Providing scholarships, philanthropy, all those will have to come into consideration. So there are challenges, but it's not insurmountable.
Thank you very much. And I see another question for you here in the chat from Dr. Pike. Dr. Pike, would you mind unmuting and reading your question?
Okay, thank you. And thank you for all the speakers. And I would like to ask a question to Dr. Kwan. And you are not only a scholar or thinker, but also the administrator as the seminary president. Can you share what you have tried and achieved at your institution or in your network collaboration with any other schools in terms of the three values, the Methodist value you presented, okay, within your lecture?
Thank you, Dr. Park. I touched on some of this in the context of my work in graduate theological education, particularly in terms of the PhD program that I had I launched with a church-related institution in Taiwan, Changyong Christian University. It is about making PhD education accessible. It is about hoping to transform and prepare them to be agents of transformation through their education. One of the issues that have become very close to my work and life as an administrator and a college president, in my context, in the United States, the indigenous people, Native Americans, their lack of education opportunities is stunning. And so a number of years ago in 2016, I made the decision at our United Methodist Jurisdictional Conference that I will provide 100% tuition scholarship for any indigenous, U.S. indigenous students. And as a result of that, I have been able to recruit a few indigenous students for whom education would be a challenge. So there are ways that we can continue to provide that kind of education and continue to uphold the values of transformation, service, and accessibility. I think it is very important that we find which ways. There are philanthropists out there that if they catch on the mission of what we are talking about, there are people who can commit to working with us to fulfill this kind of important mission that I have. I'm dedicating more and more of my own life and ministry and career into. Thank you, Dr. Park.
Thank you so much. We're almost out of time, but I do want to share a comment that I received in the chat, and I just noticed that it was direct to me rather than to everyone. But it's a very, very insightful comment. So I'm going to share it here. It's in Japanese, so I'll translate it. The commenter, I think her name is Asuka, says, I understand the seriousness of the decline in the number of Methodist institutions of higher education due to population decline, falling birth rates, and an aging population. In order to stop this, it is necessary to prevent the polarization of the world. And for this purpose, it was very easy to understand Dr. Kwan's paradoxical thinking that it is important to make the poorer people of Asia interested in the world and to open the doors of Methodist educational institutions for them. And then in response to this, it was interesting to hear the measures and challenges of various schools around the world so that we could grasp the characteristics of different regions and countries. So I thank you very much for that comment. It's great to have insightful comments from our participants as well. Thank you very much. We are running out of time. Actually, we're going a little beyond here. So let's finish with everyone saying a big thank you to Dr. Jeffrey Kwan and to our 4 responders. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you to everyone who has participated today. It has been such a good lectures, presentations, and discussions. And I would like to ask Dr. Youngmin Pike to make some announcement about upcoming events.
Let me share the screen for you. And I really want to say the thank you again, to the speaker, Dr. Kwan, and all the panelists and the guests who said the great greeting and also participant. It has been a meaningful session, and I'm very glad the Aoyama Gakuin University is joining us, to have this APAMEI joint forum together. And it was so meaningful. As you all know, by this time, maybe, the APAMEI is continuing our online forum every month and every Saturday of the month. And so that the next APAMEI forum will be the 25th of the
every
February.
Saturday of the last Saturday of the month.
Yeah,
The
last Saturday, sorry, last Saturday of the month. And so it's gonna be the 25th of February, and we will announce the detailed theme, for that subject. I want to highlight, one thing which is happening as a big event within our Methodist network, and which is the IAMSCU conference in UK happening in the end of April to the May. IAMSCU is the International Association of the Methodist Schools. So let me show you, and yeah, I think our theme is the Transforming Lives Methodist Education International Conference happening in April, and it's going to happen in 3 different places. We are visiting very historic, the sites closely related to the birth of the Methodism, and especially its founder, John Wesley. So we're going to begin with in London and move to Bristol, and also ending with the Cambridge. It's going to happen in the 25th of April to the May 1st. You can still register at the following site, IAMSCU, the website, or you can follow this one. I'm going to share this link within your chat box, and so that you can check it out. Some of the program we're going to provide is over here, and you can check this out in detail within the website. So I just want to thank you again for all the people who became the part of this wonderful forum, and again for the Dr. Kwan, and let us continue to develop this fruitful and productive discussion among us, and so that we can be the witness of this great mission of God for all the people. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. And at this time, I would like to call Dr. Flo Miranda to give our closing prayer. This will not be translated. It will be in English for everyone. Dr. Miranda.
Shall we bow down our heads and pray? Almighty Father, loving God, we are truly grateful for the wisdom we gained in today's session. Thank you for the opportunity to reflect and exchange valuable insights as we move forward to be agents of transformation in education. We know that there are challenges ahead, but we pray that you continue to bless our plans and our efforts to pursue the Methodist vision of uniting vital piety and learning. Grant, Lord, that what we learned today be translated into meaningful actions that are aligned to your perfect will. So in the end, we can give back to you all honor and glory. In Jesus' mighty name, we pray. Amen. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
I want to say
Bye.
thank you. Thank you also to our translators. Thank you for all your hard work today. Thank you to the staff.
Queen. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for everyone who made this a great event today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.